Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a piece of historical fiction that brings a quiet, personal tragedy from over a century ago roaring back to life. This isn't just a story. It's about a single moment of loss, carefully pieced together to give a voice to people we'd otherwise never know. So let's dive right in. The story kicks off with this incredibly somber line, and boom, we're right there in San Diego on March 23, 1916. The scene is quiet, the mood is heavy, and that intimate feeling is going to carry us through this entire journey. Okay, picture this. A quiet bedroom, a 47-year-old woman, Georgia Auble, is sitting by the bed of her dying husband, Charles. And over in the corner, their 16-year-old daughter, Emily, is just watching, a silent witness as her whole world is about to change. And you can just feel the helplessness in these details, right? Georgia's been right there, holding his hand for 3 straight days. But the doctor's already been and gone. He's confirmed what they already know deep down. There's nothing more to be done. No miracles are coming. It's just a family waiting for an 18-year marriage to come to an end.
So you got to ask yourself, how did it come to this? How does a healthy working man just end up here? It's a question that was probably screaming in George's mind. And to find the answer, we have to go back 3 months to one single fateful night in December of 1915.
It all started with a knock at the door, late at night. Just a simple sound, but it was the sound that marked the exact moment the Auble family's life started to completely unravel.
So, Charles, he's a painter, and he was out celebrating a new job with his buddies from the union. They were at Tivoli's Bar and Grill, having a great time. But, well, after more than a few drinks, his friends knew he'd had enough, and did the right thing. They insisted on walking him home.
And this is the moment, right here. A simple, almost stupidly minor accident. A drunken fall on his own front porch. He's fumbling for his keys, he missteps in the dark, and that one little mistake, well, it was the trigger for everything that came next.
But here's the thing. It wasn't the fall itself that was fatal. Not directly. It was the hidden injury, something happening on the inside that medicine back in 1916 was just tragically, completely unequipped to handle. And you can see here just how agonizingly slow this whole thing was. It started out with a hopeful diagnosis. Just some bruised ribs, a concussion, he'll be fine. But then, over 3 terrible months, that hope just slowly bled away into a devastating reality.
And imagine being Georgia and hearing this. By the time the doctor finally realized how serious the injury was, it was way too late. The infection was just too far gone. There was no medical magic he could perform. All he could do was give her a warning.
Okay, so let's go back to that quiet bedroom, to Charles's bedside, because in his last few moments of clarity, with his wife and daughter right there, there's something he has to get off his chest, a secret he's been carrying his entire life,
And with what little strength he has left, he apologizes, not just for the fall, but for everything. For all the burdens he carried throughout their marriage, including a pretty big lie that he'd held onto for decades.
So, what was the big secret? Turns out he'd lied about his age from the day they met, shaving 5 years off. Now, it was a secret Georgia had actually figured out years ago and forgiven him for, but you can tell it weighed on him, right up to the very end.
But Georgia, in this just incredible moment of grace, she gives him peace. She chooses to remember the good man, the good husband and father, not the small lies or the hard times. It's just a beautiful moment of love and forgiveness. He then asks Emily to be strong, to look after her mother. And then his mind? It just seems to drift back in time, back to their first home together in Chicago. And he remembers this one specific detail, a blue dress she used to wear, right from the very beginning of their life together.
And his last words, they're for her, an affirmation of a love that lasted right to the very end. He saw her beauty then, and he sees it still. And with that, he's gone.
So, the vigil is over. Charles is gone. But what happens next? Well, the story then moves into the long, quiet aftermath, and it explores the ripple effect that this one single event had on the future of his family. And just like that, life has to go on. But everything is different now. It's kind of poignant, isn't it? Even in death, his lie about his age was kept on the official death certificate. And Georgia, just 47, is now a widow, left to raise their daughter all on her own.
Then we see this number, 36. What's that about? Well, that's the number of years Georgia would live after Charles died. 36 years.
And think about that. That's a whole other lifetime. She'd watch her daughter get married, she'd meet her grandchildren, she'd see her entire city transform around her, and for all of that time, she never remarried. She carried the memory of Charles and the life they built with her for the rest of her long life.
And that leaves us with this huge universal question, right? How does a person carry that kind of loss for that long? The story doesn't really give us a simple answer. It just leaves us to think about it, because it's a question many of us will have to face ourselves.
And I think this is where the story really lands its punch. The idea is that for some losses, you don't just get over it. You learn to carry them. And that act of carrying that memory every single day, well, that isn't a failure to move on. That, in its own way, is a powerful and lasting kind of love.